completely different scenarios. So sometimes it sounds like maybe two instructors are saying an opposing thing, when reality is we might be saying exactly the same thing, but we're starting at two different points.
Yeah.
We're starting with two different dogs at two different points in their training journey.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the hard thing is I'm learning that with this first class is I'm trying to write these lectures and I'm trying to think about it with like three different people in mind. Because if I write it just for the dogs that I have, that's not going to work, you know, for the other person that has the dog, the sensitive, well, Radish is a sensitive dog too, but it's been really fascinating for me to try to get so many different perspectives. And I feel like no matter what we do, we're not going to be able to reach everybody. And I recognize that even when I was teaching in high school, you know, it's 120 kids every day.
Yeah.
And there's no way that I can adjust for every single moment of every single thing. But if I can keep approaching with curiosity and get the person to approach with curiosity, I feel like that's been the biggest gift that I can give anybody and the biggest gift that's been given to me. And that's where I try to lead from.
Yeah. 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 No,
Just to be able to ask those questions, man. It's so hard.
Yeah.
They're so different, and the one person that can do this skill but the other person that can't, and then there's the physical limitations, and then there's uh, the the compass that each person has and what they're wanting to do and not wanting to do, and whew,
It's the
yeah,
hard part with teaching when you're teaching a group, especially online, especially when a lot of the students are not one-on-one getting that input from you. They're just
yeah,
reading lectures. That I feel like when I write the lectures, I'm trying to write for everybody, and it's just
yes,
not doable. And then the lectures end up so long, and I end up with so many of them. Then people are like, "There's too much content." But you know, because I'm trying to cover every base, and you're still, as you say, you're going to miss something or someone because it's not possible. There is no recipe for dog training. If
yeah,
there was, we would probably all be out of a job, like, because it had just come up on AI. Like, this is the recipe for dog training. You know, you just
yeah,
do this and this. These are the 5 steps, and your dog will be perfectly trained. And it's not. It's
yeah,
just not. You're always coming back to that individual dog. You know, the person's goals, where the dog is at the moment, what innate traits is the dog bringing, what prior learning history is the dog bringing. Like, there's so many things to take into account. And yeah, I think that's an important thing for people to remember when they read something or hear something from an instructor or you know, anyone out there, is
hmm
recognizing they'll always be coming at that from a starting point, thinking about
hmm
that type of dog, or thinking about that dog at that point in a training journey, or thinking that maybe those skills have already been learnt, so now they're moving on to this step. It's never just like this is a blanket thing you can apply to all dogs all the time. It never is. Yeah.
And that's what I love about this staff too, is I think everybody in the staff makes it very clear that we're all adapting and we all look at the individual and we're doing the best we can for that. I don't see anyone that is just like, this is rigid, this is how it is, this is the only way. That's what I love
Exactly.
about this academy.
Yeah. 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 All right. Well, I suppose
Speaking of that,
we better let you feed your dogs, I guess.
yeah, I've still got them right here at my side. They're both like,
I
feed
can
me,
see you
I'm
having
full.
to pat them the whole time. Yeah, it's okay. You're going to get fed at some point soon. You get fed. I promise.
I don't know if you could like tell my shoulders, but
But I
they're
can
like
see
reaching and petting.
your shoulders moving as you're patting. I'm like, I know what you're doing. You're patting dogs. All right.
This is
Someone,
my management tool.
yeah, it works. It works. Someone did message me then and say, "Can I please talk about arousal modulators?" And that's arousal governors. And that's only because probably I put a post up originally and then said that I would definitely make sure that we talk
Oh
about.
no, you did, and that's what I was dying
But
for too, because I was like, I need a whole congress of those.
like tiny, you know, I like a tiny little thing about them just to say that they're just those moments that we're getting our dog to shift into their thinking brain. They're whatever we can do to get back to that thinking brain. It's humans do it as well. You know, if someone's going crazy and you know their head's gone to a place where they're thinking too rapidly, or they're not thinking well, they're just over processing, overstimulated, and or panicked about something, and you're like, just stop, just relax. It's like, it's not going to happen. What do? You get them to think about the situation instead of be overwhelmed. Think about something, you know, smell something, taste something, name 10 countries starting with A, whatever, something that pulls them back to the point where they have to think. And then because they have to think, it brings them back to that part of the brain. And that's all arousal governors really do for the dog, is bring them back from a place where they're not thinking to a place where they're having to cognitively process the information around them. And so we might be talking about things just like a start line routine where we might have it ask for a chin rest. If our dog can hold that chin rest, good, they're thinking, can they do some simple behaviors on cue? Okay, that's good, they're thinking. But then anyway, the main thing I'm getting to is that people go, well, that's okay, but how do we apply them to, say, an agility example where our dog's fine, they hold the start line fine, everything's fine, but whilst running, they get so excited about the running that halfway around they just switch off and start doing their own thing, and they're no longer processing the information, or they hit the weaves and they hit them wrong, or they pop out of them, or they just miss their contacts. And it doesn't matter how much you train well for that. If arousal is what's causing the inability to perform that behavior accurately, then we have to change something to help them reach that thinking brain before they do that. So if we took weaves or contacts as an example, people are like, well, I can't just call my dog over, do a chin rest, then do it. It's like, well, actually, sometimes you can. And one of the students from the last class had a fantastic, just where the dog pushed their collar into a hand, and the dog could be running flat out, come in, smashed its collar into her, and then sent off again. And that was a great information that the dog could process without bringing them back to an obediency place. We're not asking for a sit. We're not bringing them back so far that they're now slower or not functioning in that higher end of the optimal arousal. But the other things we can do is just use something like a platform, or something like even cavalettes and things, where we can have the dog running flat out, but can they hit that platform and actually sustain it for 4 seconds before we send them on to a contact behavior, or before we send them on to the weaves. If they can get on there and hold that for a few seconds and wait for that release, it's very likely that when we release them, they're going to do those weaves perfectly fine, or they're going to hold that contact perfectly fine. The thing is that is a throwaway behavior, because it doesn't matter if they make a mistake. So they jump on the platform and they dive straight off the other side because they couldn't think quickly enough to hold themselves there. That's fine. Does it matter if they do that 100 times? Not really. Whereas if you're sending them to the weaves and they're over aroused and they're popping out of them all the time, you're now rehearsing a behavior you don't want to be rehearsing. Same with if you're sending them to an element that has contacts and they're blowing their contacts one after another every time they're in a high arousal state, you're now practicing a behavior you don't want them practicing. So we put these arousal governors in before that, whether it's like a platform, whether it's some cavalettes, something that makes them slow down, think a little bit, and then proceed. And after a while, they will actually have that skill set that whilst running, they can pull themselves back, they retain that thinking brain, and so in the end, you can take that object out and the dog will still actually continue. But it just puts something in there that helps them get back to that thinking place, doesn't pull them so far back that now you've got a dog at lower arousal, or you've got to restart them again. And it gives you an opportunity to not rehearse unwanted behaviors. So instead of going, well, isn't that how the contact works? If they blow their contact, they weren't in a thinking place. Yeah, but who wants to practice blowing contacts to prove whether your dog was in a thinking place or not? No.
Yes.
Put the table before it. If they bounce off the table, it doesn't matter. Yes. You got the information that they weren't going to be able to hold that contact, but you got it without wrecking your contact behavior, So that's all arousal governors are. That type of thing where we're just helping them to learn how to modulate their arousal, even whilst in a stimulating environment, or even whilst mid-run and the running itself is causing them to potentially tip into excess arousal.
That's where my first podcast that I did was on kind of how I'm dealing with this arousal stuff, and it was through fitness. And exactly what you said, so much of what we've been doing is that we ask them to do positions first. Because when they do positions, we can see how clean they are, or if they're making mistakes. And if they're making mistakes and their head isn't right, then we go get their head right, and we go back to positions. Well, now you've messed up a bunch of positions. And I'm like, there's got to be a better way to see what's going on. And that's when this summer I went to Penn Vet and got to do like a lunch and learn there, and I got to watch their canometrics. And what I loved about that program was that it was 20 minutes of fitness that you could do 4 or 5 times a week. That would be the very basics of what you could do to really have a strong, fit dog. And just the warm up and the cool down was so intriguing to me, because I'm like, we can do that super fast. And I started using it as a ritual of our warm up, but then I found that it got them thinking straight away. I didn't have to do start button things. I didn't have to do, they were just ready. So as soon as we do our little fitness warm up, we go right into our work. And even Checkmate, who gets so bouncy and hoppy in his heel, and he does a lot of sneezing when we very first start healing, he wasn't doing that. And I thought, what's
Yeah.
going on here? So then I got into some really arousing play, and then he had a hard time back into hippity hoppity. So I went from the warm-up procedure we did into the healing, into some really heavy, exciting play, and then I just threw in a couple of the warm-up things right after that, went right back into healing, and it was smooth and beautiful again. And I'm asking myself, why is that working? Well, one, it could be the ritual of it, that it's a pattern that we've already started to create. The other is that it puts him in a thinking spot, that he had to think about how to use his muscles again and how to use his body again. And once he could be thoughtful about that, and I could feel, you can just feel that moment when they go, and I felt that.
Yeah.
And then we go right into our healing, go right into our positions, and now the positions are beautiful every time. And I'm not having to use positions to see, is my dog in the right headspace?
Exactly.
And so it has been such a game changer for me. And then hearing that Ashley's teaching this class that's already all about this, I'm like, oh, heck yeah. And I'm like, shoot, I should have taken your class and would have already had this figured out. But it was something I had to figure out on my own this summer.
Yeah.
But it's been huge for me, like absolutely huge, just to make them, it's not only, there's a couple parts to it though. It's I love how you said the collar give. That's one of my favorite things to do. It's that connection point. Because if my dog can come over and slam their collar, a lot in my sport they can't wear a collar, they're naked, and so they'll just slam their neck in my hand. That is that connection between us. So I can see and I can feel them and we're together again. And so then if I can add in and go to some of my fitness stuff if I need to, but I love the connection part of the fitness. I love the connection part of the collar give. So whatever you choose, I think consider, does it connect you as well? So I like those examples that you were giving, because even the table, at the table or the platform, even though you're at a distance, you're connected for that moment. It doesn't mean you have to physically be touching, but there's a palpable connection, this piece that you can see that's like, yes, I'm ready, I'm listening, okay, now go do it.
Yeah. And I do think that I think what happens sometimes when people try to use an arousal governor is they're going too far the other way. Like, for example, you've got a dog going into nose work. The dog's really pulling and screaming and being silly and wanting to get to where they're going. So the people go, right, I'm going to make my dog sit and look at me. It's like, no. Like, you could call that an arousal governor. Absolutely. It's going to change their arousal level. But it's going to also interfere with the quality of the work after it, because we really don't want to pull their attention away from where they're going, and we really don't want them to do obedience-y stuff right before that. And so I think that's what we often see with even if people are getting ready for heel work, they're using arousal governors that are too far from where they want to be. Use something that's moving. Can you do a moving hand touch? Can you do some leg weaves? Can you do something moving rather than can you hold a sit or can you what I mean? You're bringing the arousal back further than what you need to. You only want to bring them back to just inside the optimal range. If you're about to do something where you actually still want them on the edge, you don't want to bring them all the way back down here and then let them go, because what's going to happen is they'll rebound. They'll go straight past the point where you want them to be and go straight back to the super high level, which you don't want. So if you can bring them back just a little bit, they're going to sit there as they run off and keep doing the work. But if you bring them all the way back here, they're going to spring off again like a coiled spring, and they're just going to shoot straight back past where you want. And, and we hear that all the time with people that are like, the dog's okay, and then, we got the dog to stop and do these things, and that was okay, but as soon as we started again, they just shot back to this high arousal zone. You're like, because you pulled them back too far. You don't want them back that far.
It's like a slingshot.
Because that's what happens. You put them all the way back, and then they just explode back out again.
Yeah. That's why, even like with tracking as an example, before I go to tracking, I'm doing play bows, because when they do articles, they have to be able to hit the article, and if they're moving somewhat quickly, they need to be able to pull their body back and get into that position. I want to prime the muscles, and I want to prime the body in the way that I'm going to make them think about it when they're getting into it. So think about the behaviors, like the body movements, and then how can you prime that thinking part of their body and connect them so to go do that thing next.
Yeah. Perfect.
You're so brilliant.
I suppose I was just thinking how brilliant you were. So, well, we've had fun. Even if no one else enjoyed this, we've had a good.
I
We've had a good
know
time
this.
for a couple of
This is
hours.
another one of those connections, you know, where it's like we
Yeah,
haven't got to talk since camp, and this has been so
yeah.
lovely.
We could have just done this like a private Zoom or something, but you know, now we've got people can listen to it and take away what they want of it.
I love it. I love it. We should do more of this. I love
We
it.
should.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to let you feed your dogs. I'm going to go and let my dogs have a stretch. It's summer here, of course. It's much hotter here than you said icy where you are, and of course
Oh, it's ice right now. I've got
we're in
cold air coming in from the door. I'm like shivering.
yeah, no, we're not. Okay, well,
And
it was good.
I do want to extend a thank you to all the people that did listen or are listening or will listen. So you
Yeah,
guys are amazing, and you guys make
yeah,
us want to be here, and love you all. Appreciate you.
yeah. And for both of us, the people that have now had to wait on our forums because we've been doing this and instead of answering the forums, thank you for the people too, because I will get back to you now and start answering the forums again for all the gold students that have been waiting.
Well, love you,
All
friend.
right.
Have a great, I guess, great
Yeah.
day. I'm going to go
Yeah.
to bed. You're going to have a
Yeah, you
great
go to
day.
bed and get on with my day. Okay,
Yeah.
good to see you. Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody. Bye-bye.